The following featured presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
Welcome to Resilient Squadron, where we share and discuss the adventures, challenges, and representation of disabled and chronically ill fans across the Star Wars universe. Welcome to Resilient Squadron. I'm Greg.
And I'm Jack.
So Jack, there's some pretty big news this month, which is the reopening of Disneyland finally.
Yeah, it'll be opening on April 30th exclusively to California residents.
Yeah, so it's a good step forward, knowing how many precautions Disney World has taken and how far they've come and had no real cases or incidents. I think it makes sense. It's a good incremental step. Yeah, and looks like they'll be following state guidelines in California and being opening at 15% capacity. So between just residents of California and 15% capacity, it's not going to be huge crowds. So I think it's a good incremental step towards eventual reopening completely. I'm sure they'll continue to increase along with Disney World.
I'm sure they're obviously going to watch the numbers and
play
it by ear, but you got to open up at some point, and I think they're doing it smart by taking it slow.
Yeah, and the most positive part about that news is that they'll be able to hopefully rehire a lot of, at least some employees, and hopefully a lot of employees eventually that they had to let go last year.
Right.
Gone to extensive lengths to be safe and to follow CDC guidelines and their own standards for safety and safety of the guests and the cast members. And actually, if you want to find out more about the guidelines they're following and some of what you can expect as a guest in general, if you happen to be going back or preparing a trip back soon or even down the road for general guests or especially for disabled and chronically ill guests planning to go, check out our February episode where we went in depth about some of the accommodations and accessibility options available at the Disney parks. And especially, we talked some about some of the precautions and steps being taken at Disney World at that time. This should also apply once Disneyland reopens. And I think it's really important for people planning to go. Obviously, Disney has their guidelines they're going to follow, and everyone's going to have to adhere to those guidelines and expect to follow them when you go there for everyone's safety.
Exactly. And it also reminds me of an incident that took place recently with a parent and their disabled child who were denied access to the Disney store in Staten Island, New York. Greg, you want to go ahead and tell everybody a little more about what happened?
Yeah, I saw this story a few days ago on InsideTheMagic.net, and the local news there had reported on it. And I'm sure there's a lot of these cases happening, around the country, and that, ones like this just happen to catch the news. But there was a child with Microtia, meaning her right ear is kind of small and not fully developed. She's partially deaf in that ear. And she and her mother wanted to go in. This is an 8-year-old girl. They wanted to go in the Disney store. They're in the Staten Island Mall, and they were turned away because she's unable to wear a mask. And she tried to wear a gaiter over her mouth, over her face, and they do not accept that at the Disney store, part of their policy. And state mandate right now also that requires masks everywhere. And so, they went to the news and brought it up, and there was a lot of discussion about this a few days ago. And I think it's important to point out, like, from our standpoint, it's basically really unfortunate and sucks that, this whole pandemic has affected disabled people more than most, as we also talked about in another earlier episode about COVID. But I think it's important to keep in mind that basically public safety and the safety of individuals and guests, outweighs everything. Unfortunately, even disabilities and disabled rights.
Not everything is a case of discrimination when a disabled person is denied something.
Right.
But I can also imagine as a parent of a disabled child, a lot of times are on the defensive. Your guard is always up just because.
Yeah, it has to be.
Let's face it, there's absolutely 100% disability discrimination out there.
Mm-hmm.
And even I never ever let my guard down completely.
Right.
But sometimes you just have to take a step back and really think objectively.
Yeah.
Is this really a case of discrimination, or is this a valid concern?
Yeah.
And I think in this case, again, obviously, it's a valid concern because not only does the management and of this particular store have to worry about their own safety,
Yeah.
but the safety of their employees and the safety of their guests.
Yeah.
And it's really, that's all it comes down to.
Yeah. I think also it's like a example of a major challenge with this entire pandemic. And like I said, we talked about some of this in the earlier COVID episode. People look at things as decisions by first employees, which is a major problem when they have no decision-making power, and try and, confront or hold employees accountable for these choices and policies. They want to hold managers accountable. They want to hold stores and owners, business owners, and then government accountable and to blame for these restrictions, when ultimately what we all have to do is look at it as an unfortunate, really, really unfortunate side effect of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It is the virus that is causing these problems and that are making it a challenge and are really unfortunate.
And we're all dealing with it.
Yeah, everyone has to deal with it. Disabled people are probably impacted even more so than anybody else, but our disabilities don't excuse us from our responsibilities of helping to curb the pandemic and keep everyone safe. And I think it's important for parents of disabled children to keep in mind that they need to help teach those lessons to their kids, even early on, that there's, along with the discrimination that takes place, they're going to have to learn to deal with and try to overcome. There's also some degree of responsibility, and they need to model good decision making based on science. So yeah, as places keep reopening, I hope people keep being responsible, keep following guidelines, and hopefully the more we do that, the more places will keep reopening and being able to loosen their guidelines, and things are going to get back to normal.
Exactly.
Or as normal as they ever have been for disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time for our mission briefing, which is our monthly deep dive into a specific topic related to disability and chronic illness in the Star Wars fandom and Star Wars universe. This month, we're joined by guest Megan Rickards to talk about the Star Wars fan community and her experiences with it as an autistic fan, especially over the past year. Megan writes on her own fantastic blog From an Autistic Point of View, as well as at Future of the Force. We personally met Megan last year at the Force Fest virtual fan convention, where she and I were both panelists on a panel called Navigating the Fandom with Different Abilities. So welcome, Megan.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Jack. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, really happy to have you on. You're actually our first guest on the show, and it's great to have you back on, especially as we've talked to you before about some of these things on the panel.
Yeah, and I guess like we were talking about before I started recording, I'm your guys' guinea porg.
Guinea porg, exactly. Exactly.
I hope that's not trademarked by Lucasfilm.
It's a term Jack came up with, and I just ran with it.
So yeah, we want to talk a bit about fan community and our place in it and your place in it. Maybe we can start talking a little bit about your background. Do you mind talking a little bit about your autism, how it's affected you and your background with it?
Sure. Basically, my autism, I was diagnosed at a pretty early age. I want to say I was in elementary school when I first started being diagnosed with ADHD. That went on to Tourette's, which eventually over time turned into my diagnosis of Asperger's, which I believe is now just generally termed as like high functioning autism or something like that. And how it's affected my life is both socially and academically. Socially, because like I never really had that many friends growing up. I was mostly a loner, which for me was good because I loved reading many times, especially over the summer. The library literally became my second home. I couldn't get my hands on enough books. And especially now that I've transitioned to Star Wars. Oh, those books. I want more.
There can never be enough of them. There's so many of them.
Yeah, it's like my list of books I want to read is longer than I am tall. As for school, how it affected me, it just made school a lot harder. Homework that would take, like, I guess a neurotypical person, like an hour, 2 hours to do would take me like 3, 4, 5 hours. So it's like eventually made me mentally, I guess, just give up on school and just go through the motions because I had to.
Right.
And because even ask me now how I made it through, and I have no clue. I just did.
I can relate to that some with I have an ADHD diagnosis that I didn't get until my late 20s, but I clearly had all my life once I understood what it was. And I was the same way in school in terms of, I'm sure it was like a different experience slightly, but also like, yeah, I don't know how I got through school. I'm not sure how I made it at all and got a degree and everything. Like, it amazes me still.
Yeah, because it wasn't until like a year or so after I graduated college that I finally realized what I actually needed throughout all my years of school. And that was simply more time. If I had had more time to actually sit with the material and digest it rather than just, okay, this is what you learned, review it for like a quarter of the class the next day, and then move on to a new topic and do the same thing day after day. If I had more time than just that, I probably would have done a lot better. Or even if I just had like a tutor that was able to help me, especially like in math, because that's where I really struggled. Because unlike those autistics you see on all those like ABC or CNN or Fox whatever specials that are more like intellectual, that are more like the math, the science, things like that, that's not me. I'm the opposite. I'm more the artistic type that enjoys writing. So it's like, even going through school, I knew I was different. I just could not figure out how.
It's absolutely what I could have used a lot of. And I never got any kind of accommodation or understanding because I wasn't diagnosed. I didn't know what it was at the time. I was definitely under the mental state of I'm just lazy or I'm just not, quick or smart about these things. And eventually learned as I got older and got diagnosed. And all, I'm like, oh, my brain just works differently. It just.
Yeah. Whereas with me, it's like I was given options, I was given accommodations, but it's like I could tell those weren't what I needed. I just couldn't figure out what that thing was. I could not, for the life of me, vocalize it because I just didn't know, like I said, until after I graduated college.
What's the problem? If you don't know, how's somebody else going to know?
Right. Yeah, you mentioned also about some of the like what we see in shows and documentaries. Like I also think that's like one of the big. I would say probably like a subset of autism is what gets typically stereotyped or used a lot in stories and characters and traumas with like, I mean, Rain Man is a classic example, but even like other shows that have autistic characters now, it's like they always tend to be very super smart with numbers and things like that or savant.
Yeah. And one show that comes to mind for me for that is called The Good Doctor on ABC. It's about this kid with high functioning autism who's really young that becomes a doctor because he has, I believe it's called savant syndrome as well. It's like he's really super smart. So it's like, okay, great, do that. But at the same time, also make shows where it's like there are characters that are more like, I guess, not just like that, not like just one form of autism.
Right. Yeah.
Because just like there are many different forms of neurotypical people, there are also many different forms of autism.
Yeah, that's definitely what seems like one of the biggest misconceptions about autism. And it's partly driven, I think, by those stereotypes and those characters and some of those shows that people get a picture in their head of this is what autism is. And it's like, there's so many different things and so many different aspects to it and different manifestations.
Yeah, because yes, there's definitely a spectrum of severity of people like me that unless you really talk to them, learn more about them, you wouldn't even know they're on the spectrum. They're also the more like severe kind where it's like they unfortunately can't even talk.
So yeah, so having that background, can you share some of your experiences that kind of stood out to you either growing up or even as an adult? Like what kind of things have stood out to you in terms of, cases in which your autism, made you stand out or feel different?
High school was definitely the worst of it, where I really started noticing it because, yes, growing up, like I said, I didn't have many friends, but especially in high school where like the bullying stereotypically is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, for me, I was in high school during the early 2000s from '06 to 2010. And back then it was like, it's not like you see on news reports now where it's like the popular kids are helping like the disabled kid or whatever. For me, it was like just the complete stereotypical bullying. Because one of the stories that comes to mind is that one, I didn't realize, apparently I got called a gay slur over text, but I was so purposefully sheltered because I chose to be that. That was me. I didn't feel like watching anything risque or risky or rated R until I was older because I was just uncomfortable with it. So I didn't realize what a gay slur was until much later, yet I was called that over text. And because also during that time, it's like, guess I like to call myself the OG Disney fan because I like to watch it even before it was cool and more mainstream to do so. It's like while my peers were watching things like Grey's Anatomy or what are some other shows that were on during that time? Great. For some reason, that's the main one that comes to mind. CSI or shows like that. I was still watching Disney Channel and I was happily doing that because I didn't care what others thought of me. If they didn't like me for that, okay, that's their issue. That's fine. I'm happy to retreat into my books and shows. Because life's already busy and complicated enough. I need to worry about what you think. Why? And I think that's part of what drove my peers away is because I guess in that regard, I was so much more mature than them. They weren't sure what to make of it. So they were just like, pick on her.
Mm. So you got picked on a lot because of that kind of stuff. You feel like
Yeah,
that was
because
kind of
like I said,
because you were kind of acted differently than other people?
Yeah, it's like I didn't act haughty or stuck up about that. I was just like me for me, I was nice. If you don't, okay, I don't care because I didn't understand high school politics. Another experience that pops to mind is one. Apparently, there was this one time in high school where I almost got physically beat up because, for whatever reason, I was just minding my own business. People thought I'd be smart. And to this day, I still think the only reason I didn't physically get beat up is because they didn't want to deal with, they knew I'd go straight to the principal after and didn't want to deal with the headache of all that after. Back then, I was unable to stand up for myself physically because I was just too scared to. Whereas now it's like, yeah, I know I could.
Right.
I could verbally hold my own now. I feel a lot more confident that if put in that same situation, I could.
Now, did you have anybody that would stick up for you?
Nope. All on my own.
No, wow.
Right. Very isolated, it sounds like.
Yeah, very. That brings me to my third story. Of all nights, I got stood up by my so-called friends or acquaintances on grad night.
Mm.
And you won't believe what ride I got ditched on. Pinocchio. The one that contains Disney's theme song, When You Wish Upon a Star.
Right.
Because all I knew is that they got into the car ahead of me. By the time I got off in the car behind them, they were long gone.
Oh, great.
So the rest of that night was just, I was essentially just wandering aimlessly, extremely upset, trying to salvage what I could of the night.
Right. People are awful.
Yeah, because even to this day, that story still kind of hurts. And I wish a cast member had found a way to at least somewhat salvage it for me. But
yeah,
it is what it is. I've learned to move on.
Like bullying is such a problem, and that kind of social behavior in general, treating people a certain way and ostracizing people from groups and isolating them. But I think it definitely seems like it's even more so with anyone who's especially different. And, it definitely seems to make people seems to happen even more with whether it's autism or something else, that anyone who's different or acts different seems to get is more susceptible to that kind of bullying and treatment.
Right. I know personally, I never really experienced it, but there was a intellectually disabled girl in our class. I saw it a whole lot.
Yeah, that's why, like I was saying, now whenever I see on the new, at least before COVID was the thing, and people were actually going to school in person, and I saw reports on the news about how it's like the popular kids helping like the autistic kid or the physically disabled kid or whoever. It's like, yes, I'm happy for them, but part of me kind of wishes something like that would have happened to me. But
For sure.
I experienced what I experienced. I grew from it, and I moved on.
Yeah, it sounds like you have grown a lot from it too. So when did you get started blogging, and did it help with that growth?
Yeah, I got started with blogging in college because what happened first is I love writing fan fiction. So I used to do that as like my outlet for writing. That eventually led me to, like, say, in between college classes, just either write it by hand or either type it up, whatever I could between classes. And then had to take a political science class. And we were given this term paper to write about a topic from our textbook. And that was the first time I ever remember really enjoying any type of writing outside of creative type, which I mostly just did
Okay.
on my own, since for me, school was mostly about essay writing. What happened was with that
Right.
paper in political science, there were like no like actual restrictions. Yes, there were like rough guidelines given, like say most people normally have their paper around 7 to 12 pages, but that wasn't a requirement. And it's like most people did this word count. But it's like, aside from like having to be like a certain spacing and margins, there weren't any other restrictions. So professor just said, go for it. And like I said, that was the first time I remember actually having fun with any type of actual academic type writing. And so over time, it's like I began to see, even with academic writing, even essay writing got a bit more interesting as I was able to better express myself that way. And over time, that eventually morphed into my blog writing, where I was able to personally express myself without any restrictions or anything I had to adhere to.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I can see how like in my own writing, like I started blogging a while back, a few years ago, about some personal experiences, and I never really was able to find the time to stick with it because I have a journalism degree. And like I did always find I kind of need constraints on my writing, because if I have no constraints at all, I'll write way too much or spend way too long on it. And that was the problem with my blogging, was like I would spend like weeks on one blog post and it just wasn't practical for me. But I think maybe I've thought about if I had some constraints like that, like it might actually help me write easier, because I'm used to that newspaper kind of format background where it's like you got to fit this much space and structure it in this way, and like, okay, well, I can think that way and format it that way. I think we all kind of think a little bit differently in terms of how we write. That makes sense that for you it was more freeing to not have those constraints and work better with the way your brain
Yeah,
works.
how it's like I get an idea now and then I just run with it and see where it goes. And it's like, yes, I'll admit some blog posts take me a couple of weeks to do, but that's not because of the length. It's just because I'm trying to find time in between everything life throws at me.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Because it's like, I have this idea right now, just to tease my next post. I have this idea now that I love, that I'm working on, that brings me way back to my roots of blogging. And it just feels like everything's coming full circle now. It's like being able to incorporate where I started, also with bringing up what I want to say.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your blog is From an Autistic Point of View, which is clearly a Star Wars reference. But you also seem to write a lot about life in general, the fandom, things like that. How would you describe the point of view that you bring to those areas?
Well, yes, it's a Star Wars reference because, like I tell a lot of people I meet and talk with, Star Wars is my life. So, yeah, the title of my blog is a complete nod to that. And more specifically, the reason I called it that is something I didn't realize until, can't remember what month last year, but it definitely was last year. My mom and I were watching a special on autism together, and they were talking about the people that get hired by like IBM, Microsoft, Apple, places like that. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm thrilled for them. But then What about the people like me that are, yes, autistic, but also more artsy? What I call the artsy autistic. It's like, where do we fit in? And then especially people like me, where, like I said before, I'm so high functioning that unless I told you, chances are you think I was neurotypical.
Right.
So it's like, once I saw that, that is when the light bulb clicked, and I was like, oh, this is my niche. This is where I fit in. This is where I could really talk about things, where it's not just the smart intellectual autistic, it's also the artsy type. And like seeing things from that point of view.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because like I said, for many years, I was struggling to find where I fit in, how I could express myself. I just kept seeing constantly autism, 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 autism. Okay, cool. Yes, I'm technically part of that, but I'm not really low functioning, but yet I'm also not like super traditionally smart. So it wasn't until that special, like I said, that it finally, after many years, it finally clicked.
Right. We should probably define some terms here too. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the phrase high functioning in terms of autism generally refers to a higher level of intellectual development versus those autistic people who have some type of developmental impairment. And I know there's a lot of debate about that terminology, but however you define it, like one result of that difference is whether or not it's like apparent that a person is autistic or not. Like whether they have,
I guess you could say, like any physical disabilities, any physical or noticeable disabilities.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, like with mine, I have what I consider an invisible disability, in which you would not know that I'm just, disabled or ill with my chronic illness, dysautonomia. But sounds like it's kind of similar in the sense that in a lot of cases with some people, it's almost like an invisible autism where people don't know about it unless you tell them about it.
Same thing with spina bifida. I mean, spina bifida, there's you can be like confined to a chair, whereas like I'm able to walk with braces and crutches. But there's some people that are confined, but then there's some people who have what is called spina bifida culta, and the only way you can even maybe tell is because they're really, really short.
Right. So these are all very different conditions, but for each of them, in some cases, it's not easily apparent to people that you have them when they're interacting with you. So that sounds like an interesting perspective that you bring to your writing. So are you working on transitioning into more professional writing?
That's my dream. Yes. I'd love to be able to do this type of writing professionally. Yes, I enjoy writing for pop culture, but more recently I've been enjoying writing about myself, not because it makes me feel like proud or above everyone else, I guess you could say, but because it gives people to see life again, like I said, from this more specific autistic point of view, rather than just the traditional intellectual point of view or point of view from a parent with a kid that has autism. It's more like actually this type of writing for me allows me to tell others what it's actually like living with it and inform them that, again, not just one form of autism, but many. So it's like, yes, ideally I would love to be able to make a living off this type of writing, but for now I'm content with where I am, just doing my blog and trying to grow it little by little.
Yep. So what would you say the fan community around Star Wars has meant to you? And especially, I would say in general, the past few years, but also, especially in the past year, we've talked about this a bit. I'm really curious to hear your perspective on that.
Well, to me, the fan community means everything and more because, like I said, growing up, I had very few to no friends. So stumbling upon this, even as an adult, was like just amazing. First meeting the creator of Future of the Force and being able to express myself in that way and write for that was just amazing. And then meeting Adam from a certain point of view podcast. He also has a Discord where he runs that I'm mostly in now, and being able to talk with those people in the fan community, despite being a blogger, I can't describe it. Words fail me. Because for the first time in my life, I feel truly accepted for who I was and people that could relate to the same shows and movies that I enjoyed. Because like, even though it took me until I was an adult, I was glad to finally have those kind of people.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking about that when you were talking earlier about your experiences and not having anyone around you to support you at the time growing up. Community filled that gap that you had.
Yeah, because the funny thing is, unlike a lot of people, I actually didn't get into Star Wars until I was an adult, until like my early 20s. I mean, yes, I grew up going to Disneyland and riding Star Tours,
Mhm.
so it's like I was kind of interested in it that way, but I didn't actually watch any of the movies until I was like 19, 20, 21, something like that. That's when I really started diving in, and ever since, bookshelves full of books, desk full of stuff, shelves full of other
Gone
stuff.
all in.
Yeah. Basically, Steve Santweet is like my idol. One of my Star Wars idols.
He's up there for a lot of us, yeah. Is it made it easier to fit in just having more people with the same interests?
Yeah, because it's also why I'm grateful to have the parents that I do,
Mm.
that taught me if people like you for you, great, amazing, have fun with them. If they don't, why are they worth your time? Which is literally the motto I still carry with me to this day. It's like, if people want to be mean to me, okay, why do I need them? If they want to be nice to me and be my friend, great, awesome, someone else to talk with and have fun with.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great, healthy attitude to have, but it could still be isolating, can't it? To not have people you're with, even if you're comfortable with yourself. So that when you do find like fandom or another community that you actually relate to, it's like a huge relief.
Yeah, although then again, for me in school, it probably helped that I was so busy just trying to pass my classes
Mm.
that friends for me were more like an afterthought. Yes, I'd love to hang out and have fun with you, but right now my main concern is school. How the heck do I pass if I'm struggling?
Right.
If I'm struggling and I don't know how to ask for the help I need because I don't know what that help is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because looking back now, it probably would have been nice to have friends that could have helped me and that could have studied with. But again, life is what it is. It gave me what it gave me. Ask me how I made it this far. Not a clue.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Very relatable again. So you actually got to go to Celebration, right? Back in 2015?
2015. Yeah, that was actually my first celebration. And I had no idea what I was doing then because it wasn't long before then. I want to say like 2013, 2014, something like that is when I first really started getting into Star Wars. So it's like
Mhm.
Star Wars Rebels was my first real introduction to Star Wars. I started watching that. And then between the shows, I also watched, that's when I started watching the movies. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is amazing. I want to go to Celebration.
Mm.
My main thing was to see the premiere of, I want to say it was Rebels season 2. But when I got there, by the time I made it up those stairs, nope, lines closed. It wasn't even supposed to be open yet, but they had to open it because it was becoming a fire hazard of people in the hallway. So they opened it real quick, let people in, filled up quickly. By the time I got up there, nope. Your
Yep.
main reason for coming to Celebration, gone.
That's too bad. Luckily, you got to see it still, but just not in that setting.
Yeah. Yeah, because part of my dream still is to sit in a room with other Star Wars fans. And, well, I mean, technically, I already did part of that by seeing the movies, but
Sure.
still, nothing beats going to a celebration and sitting in the same room with
Yeah.
other mega Star Wars fans.
It's who you're seeing it with, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, yes, people cheered and stuff at the Star Wars movies I went to, but I have a feeling that nothing compares to, like I said, those mega fans that are there with you, seeing like the
Mhm.
movie or seeing the show or seeing whatever.
Yeah, I've never gotten to go to a celebration or any kind of big convention like that where, especially where stuff is revealed, but like I love, like one of my favorite things is watching the videos, clips, whether bootlegged or not. You know, we don't want to support bootleg videos of these things, but when you get the reactions from the crowds of these reveals or just watching premieres of things.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'll admit I've also done my fair share of that. It's like, especially when you know something big is coming, it's like you want to see it at the same time as everyone else.
Yeah. So are you going to be able to go to Celebration next year?
Didn't even bother canceling my ticket.
Okay,
I still have the paper.
Great.
Yep. Because I don't care what hoops I have to jump through, what situation I'm in life at that point. I am going there because luckily I have family that lives around the area. So I have a free place to stay. If I want to, I can have free food or I can buy it there. So that all I really have to pay for is I paid for the ticket already. And then all I have to pay for is parking. And then if I want to buy food and or souvenirs.
There you go. Yeah.
So it's like, that's literally telling me I have no reason not to go.
Yeah, that helps a lot. That helps a lot having people in the area. So are there any particular Facebook groups or Discords or other communities that you're a part of you want to mention?
Yeah, when it comes to Facebook groups, I mainly just follow the same people I follow on Twitter. So
right.
I either follow on Twitter or whose podcasts I listen to. So it's like, for me, Facebook's like a wash. But Discord, like I brought up before, that for me is where it's at. That's where I have my most fun and where I'm my most relaxed. Because I was lucky enough to join the free Discord that Adam Goswick from A Certain Point of View podcast runs, and the people in there are just beyond funny due to their range of personalities in there. Just one warning: if you or any listeners want to join, the more you get insulted, the more you are loved. Nothing in there obviously is said in malice or bullying, but always in good spirited fun. So it's like, because you should see how specifically two people on there greet themselves. It's like, they don't consider themselves friends. They consider themselves worsties in the best, most fun way possible. Because, of course, when it needs to get serious, we're able to get serious. But for the most part, yeah, we love to just have fun, let loose, and go crazy in there. Because just the amount of like different rooms and channels that are in there, like the Not Safe for Work channel, or it's like just the fun spoiler channel, or just the cantina. There's even a Max Rebo's lounge where it's like you can list what music you're listening to. And then the most recent addition was an art channel where you can share art either that you found online that looks cool or that you've actually done yourself.
Gotcha. Right. That's really cool.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to join, contact Adam Goswick at the Goz, GOZ85 on Twitter, and he should be able to help get you a link and allow you to join in all the craziness and fun.
Great. Yeah, we'll include also a link to his Twitter in the show notes. So you can check out the link there. If you want to get in touch with him. I don't know him personally, but I follow him, and he does a This Tech, which is a blog about Disney and technology, which is really cool. Really cool for me. I'm really interested in that stuff.
Yeah, like I said, heaven forbid I have time to read. So it's like the main thing I do is I listen to the podcast and interact with him on Discord.
Right. That's really cool. Yeah, so I'm really active primarily on Facebook as far as groups and stuff and communities. I'm also personally really active on Twitter. That's my main place where I'm spending most of my time. I'm using Facebook less and less as general usage, but I just go there for the groups. And but I found they're kind of hit or miss. Like I'm in a lot of groups, and most of them I either like have left or muted them or something because they're hit or miss in terms of the quality, which is usually a matter of like the moderation. And I feel like most communities really, it really comes down to how well run and moderated they are.
Yeah, it's also why for me, it's like I said, yes, I'm part of a few Star Wars groups on Facebook, but I'm more like a casual observer there. But secondarily, Facebook for me is more like for family, personal stuff. And Twitter is more for like my blog and more Star Wars, like geek stuff. So that way it helps keep my two lives separate, my personal life and my Star Wars life.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would guess I'm not involved in many Discord communities, but I feel like I'm just thinking about this. I think there's probably like almost like a hierarchy or a spectrum of like of quality interactions where it's like Twitter, I enjoy Twitter a lot and the community there because it just kind of fits the way that I think and write and interact with people. But also it's like the most toxic because there's no moderation whatsoever. And there's very few tools that Twitter gives you to control your own responses, replies and things like that. There's no downvoting or anything like that. Whereas like on Facebook, it's more moderated, but it's still kind of a lot of them are still public groups or they're still open or less. My experience is they're less moderated. I imagine the Discords are probably pretty tightly controlled. Like people are really in there keeping things on, clean and keeping out the toxic people.
Yeah, because especially in the Discord I'm part of, the way we like to describe it is Twitter, but moderated.
Yeah, right. That sounds good. Yeah.
Safely moderated Twitter.
I could use that actually. Yeah, of course, we have to plug a little bit our podcasting network's Facebook group, which is the Skywalking Through Neverland group. And that's a really well-managed, positive community and deals with a lot of other fandoms too. It's not just Star Wars, but mostly Star Wars. But that's definitely a really positive place. And also, ever since Jack and I went to Galaxy's Edge and ourselves in 2019, like we've got into there's several groups related to Galaxy's Edge on Facebook, and I know they have some Discords also. But there's a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge group that is really a great community because it is focused on that topic, especially, and everyone's just like, those are the diehard fans. They're really into Galaxy's Edge. They're into Star Wars. Most people there have gone there or want to go there. And to talk about that setting and that environment is really fun. There's also some like customizer groups that relate to that. Like we've mentioned a few times on this show, Mubos, which is just a really great group run by
Dan Flores.
Yeah, run by Dan Flores. That's really, again, he moderates that heavily and keeps it really clean. And it's very, very focused on customizing droids from Mubos droid builders at Galaxy's Edge, and all the great creative, cool things people do with those that we've kind of gotten into. But like on the other hand, I'm in a lot of collecting groups because I'm big into collecting, and those are some of the more like those are sort of like the less moderated groups. And I guess because they're not talking about like fandom and the content and the canon and all that kind of stuff, it's like they get into talking about the figures and stuff. It gets a lot more antagonistic and negative and angry. And so more and more I've been like leaving those groups or muting them unless I have something I want to look for or something to share.
Yeah, because it's like, especially when it comes to collecting, there's limited supply of something and everyone wants it. Everyone's trying to fight over it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of just frustration from fans of things they can't get a hold of. There's a lot of anger at
elitism, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. And especially in terms of like the cost of things, that's actually been a turnoff for me that kind of got me to leave one or two groups. Is just I'm happy for people to have their collections and be able to afford things and have massive amounts of things and very expensive items. But after a while, some groups become very focused on that kind of stuff and I don't feel respectful of the fact that not everyone can do that. And they still want to be involved in the collecting and in the fandom in that way. But
yeah, because it's like for me, if I come across something like I don't really collect, but if I do see something that looks cool and that I would like to collect and someone has it, I'm just like, oh wow, that's amazing. I'm glad you like it. I'd love to have it, but I'm glad you do. And I'll have enough fun enjoying it from afar, enjoying it through pictures.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of those groups, like I even am in them just to see the stuff and be able to appreciate it. Like, oh man, that's so cool. I love that, that statue looks so cool. I'd love to have it. I'm never going to afford it, but I love looking at it. And then there's somebody's posting like, check out my 10 statues, and like, whew, man, those are like 1,000 a piece or whatever, it's like, it gets rough.
I mean, that's not to say that I turned down an opportunity to go to Rancho Obi-Wan, but
yeah, exactly.
Until then, I'm happy enough, again, just enjoying it from afar, enjoying it through pictures, videos, whatever someone posts.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing for me too with groups in general that in terms of the tone and the way I think a lot of groups could be better, even though it's a lot of positive groups, I think people don't always realize you need to have a certain amount of like empathy and openness and inclusiveness to everyone involved, because not everyone's going to have the same capabilities. You know, I'm very sensitive to it in terms of the illness and disabilities. Like in the Galaxy's Edge group that we're in, not everyone can go to Galaxy's Edge, but I think a lot of people will come in there and they'll appreciate it, you know, and be able to look at that stuff. They like to share the experience in that way. But people have limited means or limited ability. And
I'll say it's also great about that community is everyone is so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They have the quote unquote smugglers like, hey, you can't go. Tell me what you want. I'll go get
yeah, I meant to mention that. Yeah.
And they usually don't charge. They're not in it for the money because they usually don't charge much extra. It's usually the price of the item plus shipping and then maybe a little bit for them. But it really is about, hey, you can't go. Let me help you out.
Yeah, I know. I really love that too, because a lot of those people, they really go all in on it is a smuggling group. Like they literally, that's their reason. They're going to go in there and they're going to smuggle out some products from Galaxy's Edge for people they can ship to who can't get there otherwise.
Well, the one girl, Lisa Marie, she is the Princess Smuggler.
Right, exactly.
That's her moniker.
Right, that's so cool.
Yeah, but at the same time, yes, I know people that could get me stuff. That could either go to downtown Disney and get me stuff, or it's like I know people who'd be willing to go to who live close enough to Disney World and would be willing to ship it to me. But for me, it's like, no, for me, it's about the entire experience.
Yeah, exactly.
About being there, buying it yourself, whether it be like a stuffed animal or a t-shirt or a bag, or in particular, the thing I'm really looking forward to, I don't care how long it takes, I will wait, is the lightsaber. Right. Yes, Disneyland Galaxy's Edge may be opening theoretically around the end of April, but chances are building a lightsaber won't be part of that, probably till like end of the summer, maybe not even this year. I don't know. We'll see how things go. But again, that's also why, yes, I could have someone go and make it for me and I could have my own lightsaber already. But for me, it's also that experience that I want of doing it myself.
Yeah, definitely. It's like if people are able to go, like I think most people are going to feel like that's the best way to do it. And people who can't, then it's great to have an option. And same goes for meeting up in person. Because while there are so many more opportunities now for people to take part in events that they haven't been able to before, and while we hope those options continue under whatever the new normal is once the pandemic is passed, there's really no substitute for meeting up with other fans in person, if you can.
That's also why I'm looking forward to Celebration 22 set. That way, all the people I've been talking to online, be it on Discord or also the people I've met on Twitter, it's like finally being able to meet them in person. Because it's like, yes, it's one thing to talk online and have fun and relax with them, but another thing to actually be able to meet in person and hang out and all celebrate together.
Yeah, I guess I gotta imagine that's gonna be pretty special. I mean, I would say even especially after the last year, it's like just everyone being isolated. Even people who know each other nearby are not able to get together. And now it's people, I think, probably be able to start getting together in groups and whatever in events. But then Celebration, it sounds like it'll be the thing where all these people everywhere will be able to get together and see each other, meet each other in person. That is pretty awesome.
That's the main reason why, if I ever did get the opportunity, I definitely want to do a lightsaber or especially a droid meetup.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because it's like, yes, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, however long you're able to attend for, days of like chaos and exhaustion. But it'll be worth it. It'll be the best exhaustion you've ever felt.
That's how we felt about Galaxy's Edge, especially me with my fatigue and stuff and my energy issues. Like it was such an effort. It took so much out of me. So worth it.
It's like it sucked in the best way possible.
Right. So do you feel like the groups in the community have been especially helpful in the past year in terms of like isolation and all that, just dealing with everything going on?
Well, like I said before, generally I'm fine just doing my own thing, be it reading, writing, watching YouTube,
Hmm.
doing whatever. But yes, when there are those times where it's like I want to talk to someone or I need to talk to someone, yes, they've been amazing. But I've also unfortunately had a chance to see the uglier side of Twitter and
Yeah,
especially Star Wars fandom.
right.
But yeah, it's like the groups I'm part of. Yeah, they've been extremely helpful, and I've been extremely grateful and appreciative to be part of them.
Yeah, I've definitely recognized like the toxic area of the fandom has just gotten more and more vocal, but also they're getting more and more shut out of certain areas if you can find the right groups and communities.
Yeah, again, how we've been saying, it shouldn't be about like what you have or how much of something you have. It should be about literally celebrating together. Celebration shouldn't just be like a one time or like an every other year kind of thing. It should be like a daily thing, celebrating like this is what you like in Star Wars. This is what I like in Star Wars. If we don't agree, okay, why don't we don't agree?
Yeah, right.
And it's like if we do agree, okay, awesome. Let's talk about it more. And it's like even if you disagree,
Okay.
okay, like I said, talk about it more, figure out why.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the Celebration 2022 Facebook group is good because it is like you said, it's like we have no plans to go to Celebration, but it's just a good positive group of excited fans who are just really excited to go and talk about it and talk about Star Wars in general. And there's all kinds of topics were posted in there. It's not just Celebration and going there, that's a big part of it, but it's also just like you said, Celebration should almost be like all the time. And that's the kind of community I like to be a part of.
Yeah, and it's like groups like that are good so that like say as celebrations going on, at least what I've done before when I couldn't attend when celebration was in Orlando and Chicago, what I've done is like celebration part of it is talking with random people about like how excited you are about what news is coming out. Like
Hmm.
say the return of this show or it's like the announcement of that show or that movie. So it's like using those groups to talk about it, not just with your friends, but also talk about it just with random people to find out how excited they are about this or that or whatever. Or it's like, even if they aren't excited about it, again, find out why.
Yeah, that's something we talked about previously on an episode is that the idea that you can get together with somebody if they're really strongly in the fandom. I mean, really anybody who's enjoys this stuff, but especially somebody who's really into the fandom, like you can get together with them and you don't know anything about them. But if you're both in a good positive mindset about it and fans, like you can just talk about it and go into this stuff and connect to people, which is really cool and special.
Yeah, because just like I've heard happens at Celebration in person, where it's like people meet and they can become friends or they
Yeah,
can become like boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. They can get engaged there or they can have like marriage ceremonies there, as I heard happened at one,
right.
where
No
it's
doubt.
like Obi-Wan and Satine literally got married. It's like
Oh, thank
who
goodness.
says that can't happen online as well in the various groups
Yeah, right.
where it's like people can talk and then become friends and then make plans maybe to one day meet up in person and see where things go from there.
So yeah, we have this one group that we got invited to by a friend that's like it's quote unquote the non-toxic Star Wars fans. And maybe toxic isn't the word, but it's like unfortunately like one of the it kind of comes across as one of the more toxic groups I've been in. And like I said, maybe toxic isn't the word, but there's just a lot of just like argumentative, discussions and stuff.
Negativity and
Negativity is maybe the better word.
maybe passive aggressive
Yeah.
hostility.
Yeah. So people throw out a topic a lot and then people will I feel like almost with a lot of places like you'll see a lot on Twitter that some account will throw out a question like, so what's everybody think of Last Jedi? I'm like, okay, well, this is going to go south quickly, like, why do you even start that discussion? Like, there can be a great positive discussion, but not in an open, unmoderated area like this, And
I mean, the movie sucks. But sorry,
don't you start?
If you want to say the movie sucks, say the movie sucks because XYZ. Or it's
Exactly.
like
No,
I loved it because
the thing.
XYZ.
Right, that's the thing. I mean, like Greg and I definitely disagree on The Last Jedi.
It's our running joke.
But we also, it's a running joke, but we also, it's not like, it's like, I mean, we have we can back up our opinions.
Right.
So it's not like just, oh, it sucked, whatever. I mean, I can go on for a long time. Well, why I don't like it, but then Greg can talk about how he does like it.
Yeah, and what you said was totally tongue in cheek at the standpoint of like, we never say something like that. We say like, it just wasn't for me. It didn't work for me. I had these criticisms of it. I wish they had done this or this differently or better. And, this applies to a lot of the different movies or media that's out there. And it's like, if you can back it up and explain it, or even just, it just didn't work for you. It wasn't what, it wasn't for you or you're disappointed by it. That's okay. But it's when people start off the discussion about like, it's trash. Oh, that movie is garbage,
and then they can't back up their statement.
Yeah, I can't back it up. But also just like the tone and the wording they use, I think is what really bothers me. And that's what defines to me toxicity is like when people are coming out and saying that movie was just trash, and like, then there's other people there in that community, in that group who are looking at that, who are like, that's my favorite movie. It defined me as a person. like I related to that movie more than anything in the world. And you're saying it's trash. And I wish people were more sensitive and thought about that stuff more in the way they word things. Because even that person might be thinking like, well, I'm not insulting anybody or saying anything bad about anybody in particular, but you're putting down something that they're passionate about. And that's where I wish people were more open and respectful of other people's opinions and their passions. And I think that's what more people should bring into groups and
that's
communities.
One thing I kind of learned as an artist too, is like, as an artist, you're your own worst critic.
Mm-hmm.
So I may sit there and say, like, I'll have a piece. And I'm like, yeah, I like my piece, but I could change this, and this sucks, and I'm crazy about that. But then I never really thought about it until somebody told me, like, if somebody really likes your art, and you are sitting there, not again, because you're just self-critical and you're a perfectionist. You're saying you keep bringing up what's wrong with it. Then you could inadvertently tell them, oh, they must have bad taste because they like your art.
Yeah.
I was like, I never really thought of it that way. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. That's also why I'm trying more to say, basically, the phrase I'm trying to use more is, well, at least for me, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Or it's like, for me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to like empathy and being able to understand other people's perspectives and be able to step outside your own shoes.
Yeah, that, and to go back to what Jack was saying about being a perfectionist, it's like, if you're too much of a perfectionist, then nothing will ever get done, because all you'll see are the flaws, the things that need to be improved, and
exactly.
It will never be done enough.
Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel about a lot of the Star Wars media, about the franchise. There is some stuff that didn't work for me, and that's okay. And it could have been like, I wanted all of it to be perfect. But things can be good enough, and things can be enjoyable in certain ways, but not others. Like, there's certain movies where I think the plot didn't really work, but I really enjoyed these moments and these emotions.
Yeah, basically how it's like, are there things that can be changed? Yeah, sure, definitely. Mm-hmm. But did I enjoy it as a whole?
Right.
Or did I enjoy it for what it was? Yeah. It was fun. Or, no, not exactly. Really.
Yep.
Because like Last Jedi, I mean, again, I always talk about how I dislike it, but I mean, Greg and I agree with this too. Like, we don't think there is a bad Star Wars film.
Exactly.
They're all good, but there's some that we have issues with. But again, like I personally do not by any means hate The Last Jedi.
Right.
It's just not my favorite.
Whereas it's like one of my top ones, but I still have my criticisms of it. Like there were so many things that happened that are like important to me and like worked so well for me and clicked for me. But then like, yeah, there's these things about it that didn't work that could have been better. And that's probably true of every one of the movies. People bring a lot of bias and experience to each of those.
Yeah, and it's like again, like I was saying, yes, could those be improved? But how did that really deter or like ruin the entire movie?
Now, I was going to say, yeah, that's one of the areas where it's like, to me, opinions on on the films or media, it's like, is so subjective, because even when two people can agree completely on the flaws or the positive aspects of something, you can still come away with like, okay, but did that ruin it for you? Or is that just didn't bother you enough to make it a bad experience, you know?
Yeah, how it's like, I'll bring up a personal example from a lot of people think Luke in the original in A New Hope is annoying, but I was going to go into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters. It's like, yeah, a lot of people think that it's annoying, and I can see why. But for me, I see that as relatable because I was the same way at his
I was
age.
such a
I was
whiny
just
kid,
as
yeah.
whiny as, because what's he supposed to be in that movie? Like 15, 16, 17, something like that? Yeah, I remember being the exact same way, just as whiny at his age. And the same can be said for Ahsoka and the original Clone Wars movie. It's like, yes, I can see how people would find her annoying in that movie. But again, at her age, I remember being just as annoying, just as snippy.
Yeah, and
just getting on people's nerves as much.
Right.
I didn't do it purposely. That was just me. So it's like, I can relate to her like that.
Yeah. And like her, we've grown over the years, you know, and we've developed out a lot of that. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, I think it was always the case with Luke as well, but definitely with Ahsoka, like, they deliberately made her very annoying in the beginning so they could have that arc. And that was always the goal. And even, I think they've even warned Ashley about it, you know, saying people aren't going to like her at first, you know, which is what happened. And I think that was the same with Luke. I don't think enough people realize, like, my understanding is that was pretty intentional to make him pretty whiny kid at the beginning, because he's going to have that growth. Even by the end of that first movie, he was a completely grown person.
And Kylo as well.
Oh yeah.
Kylo, that's the reason Kylo, because like I know a lot of people were upset when The Force Awakens came out, because like, oh, Kylo was just a whiny little jerk, and all these threw temper tantrums, and he pretty much outmatched by a stormtrooper.
Right. Just about.
But then I knew, like I said, it didn't bother me because like I knew there's going
to be somewhere to take that and grow it.
Yeah, because it's like, that's not to say that you can't find a character like Luke or Ahsoka annoying at first. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, find them annoying at first. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. But also realize, be patient, especially with the way Lucasfilm is now. Be patient. There's likely a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, they are planning things a bit more now than they have been for a little while. Yeah, is there anything else you want to add, Megan? Anything about your experiences or your thoughts on the fandom? Or
basically, just like, I'm glad it might have taken many years for me to reach this point, a lot longer than a lot of other people my age, but I'm just happy and content to be where I am now. And I just hope that other people can find a way to do the same, to just be happy to be themselves, regardless of what others think. But I'd like to add a caveat to that, which is that don't be showy or braggy about it. Be who you are, regardless of what others think, but don't be like over the top about it. Be like grateful for what you have. Yes, like me for me, but not like me for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Yeah, it's well said too.
Yeah, so again, just be happy being yourself. And like I said, I'm glad to be where I am now, on the road to hopefully one day making my dream come true.
And I have no doubt you'll get there. And I think that's a great message for our audience in general too. It's like, you know, we all have our challenges, and our audience specifically, who we kind of are trying to represent, that we've all got challenges. We all have a hard time. We need to find contentment and acceptance in who we are, and confidence in who we are, even apart from the things we're going through.
Now that, and know that dreams, unfortunately, take time to come true. So just work towards it day by day. Eventually, you will reach it.
Yeah, I think so too. So where can people find you, Megan?
If you want to find me, I can be found on Twitter at FAAPOV, which stands for my blog, From an Autistic Point of View. Or you can find my blog at From an Autistic Point of View, all spelled out, .wordpress.com.
Great. And of course, we'll put those links also in the show notes, so feel free to check those out. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show and actually being our first guest. We really appreciate it, and being our Guinea Porg.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. The time literally just flew by.
So thanks a lot for joining us this episode, and thanks a lot to Megan for being our first guest. It's an awesome conversation. We really appreciate you coming on. And again, we want to hear from listeners. We want to hear your story, any thoughts or feedbacks on this topic. What's the community meant to you? What's it been like for you in this past year dealing with interacting with the community, pros and cons? You can feel free to reach out to us on social media. We're Resilient Squadron on Facebook and Instagram, and at Resilient Squad on Twitter. And please leave us a rating and review on iTunes, which will really help us out. We're part of the Skywalking Network, where you can find other great shows like Talking Apes, classic Marvel Star Wars comics, the Max Effects podcast, Neverland Clubhouse, and our flagship show, Skywalking Through Neverland. Oh, and Mark Hamill. Now that we've had our first guest on the show, all the pressure is off. Now you can feel free to return our calls and come on the show.